Everyone's mental health is important and should be more recognized. Many people suffer with mental illnesses, and sometimes they do not realize that they even have one. Unfortunately, it is very common for teenagers specifically to have mental health disorders. If teens do not get the help that they need, their illness can continuously get worse and lead to self-harm or suicide. The issue of teenage mental health is something that can be prevented by increasing the number of professional guidance counselors in high schools. Students should be required to visit the counselors monthly to check in and chat. This will allow students to talk to a counselor without worrying about judgment or the negative stigma, since it would be a requirement for each student. The monthly appointments with counselors would be confidential, so students can really open up and trust who they are talking to. This solution can be implemented through 3 important steps: approval, funding, and hiring. I am a student at Elon University who conducted extensive research on this topic. This topic is very important to me and should be talked about more because my friend from high school, Pierce, suffered with depression and died from suicide about 3 years ago. Pierce was always joking around and he made everyone smile. He had a loving family and a great group of friends. From the outside perspective, Pierce's life seemed perfect. However, not many people realized that he was suffering with depression until it was too late. Pierce's story has made me really passionate about this topic, and it is important because it shows a real-life example of how mental illness can severely affect teenagers to that extent if they do not receive the help that they need. Sometimes teens are scared to get help, or they are unsure if they even need it. For that reason, requiring all high schoolers to talk to trained counselors will benefit them more than they realize. An article states that the rates of public and self-stigma are high. There is also evidence to suggest that the stigma has worsened. This is an unfortunate reality. However, the main goal for hiring more counselors is to reduce the stigma and encourage students to want to talk to someone. The approval step is essential because in order to begin the process and implement the plan, the high school must approve of the idea of hiring a greater number of guidance counselors. The guidance or psychology department of the school would be a reasonable starting point because they're knowledgeable about the topic and would be inclined to help. After the school board approves the plan, the next step is funding for the high schools to pay the professionals the correct amount of money for their work and time. The school could expand their budget to possibly get government money or a grant to pay the professionals. If more money is needed for this step, the guidance or psychology departments could fundraise through the school to raise money. The amount paid to each professional counselor can be decided based on how many students they are working with, as well as how much of their time is spent at the school. The ideal goal is that the guidance counselors will be working with a smaller group of students than they are used to, so they can really get to know each individual. Students will be required to visit these counselors once a month, and the appointments must be at least 15 minutes. It is simply to check in and talk about how the student is doing. Even if a student is not struggling with mental illness, talking to someone can be therapeutic and comforting, especially if a problem does arise. The last solution for prevention is the hiring step for the high school to ensure that the newly hired counselors are well-trained, reliable professionals. The guidance or psychology department of the high school can hold interviews for the counselors to see if they qualify. Interviews can be a good representative of someone and can also ensure that they are willing to put in their best efforts. For this step, there could be certain criteria that the potential professionals must fit. For instance, the potential counselors must have their degree in the psychology field to be eligible. It is important that the staff chooses counselors who are knowledgeable and caring so that students are actually willing to open up to them. In a narrative I have read during my research, the author emphasizes the positive impact that her counselors had on her mental health journey. She gives credit to her therapists who all had positive attitudes and were respectful to her. Her story shows the importance of hiring counselors that actually want to assist and care about the students. During these interviews, it is crucial for the guidance and psychology department to learn about one's background, knowledge, personality, and desires. Some may argue that if students are forced to go to counseling, they will not use their time wisely or be comfortable opening up to a new counselor if they feel like they do not need the help. Although initially some teens may not take counseling seriously, it is completely worth it for the students who will. The required counseling could save the lives of those struggling. Overall, it is possible to prevent the issue of teenage mental health by increasing the number of guidance counselors in high schools that students should be required to visit monthly. The high school staff and students can get things started by taking action themselves. First of all, The guidance or psychology departments can talk more about mental health. There's always room for more knowledge about mental illness. It is proven in a research study that students actually want to learn more about how to balance their school, work, and social life, as well as stress management, which is what the guidance or psychology departments should educate students about. Second, high school students should ask each other how they are doing and be kind to one another. No one knows what could actually be happening in someone else's life. Last of all, schools should encourage students to trust the counselors. A great first step for everyone is to work together and use their counseling appointments wisely. Although teenage mental illness is an unfortunate problem in the United States, this new and feasible idea can immensely reduce the issue, and we can ultimately eliminate the stigma.